Hello and welcome back to the Conscious Contact podcast. My name is Genay Peavey and I'm going to be your host today and always. But today is a solo episode, so that kind of means I get to talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about, which I guess is kind of the case in most of my episodes. I can talk about whatever I want. But when I have a guest, I do try to let that conversation flow as naturally as possible or talk about whatever that guest is particularly excited about at that time. So on solo episodes like today, like with always, this is my own personal opinion. This is not a how-to podcast. This is not a I'm going to change your mind and give you a revelation. This is just, hey, maybe I think differently on certain things. Maybe you feel the opposite, and listening to someone with a different viewpoint could either help you make a stronger argument for your own opinion or help you to soften a little bit and see the other side. So I've got my phone over here with me, smartphone, because I feel like because quote unquote receipts were given for this particular situation, I think that it is helpful to gloss over them at the very least, just to have some kind of touch point to come back to. So what I want to talk about today is the allegations against Jonah Hill by his ex-girlfriend. She has come out and posted, and again, I think they're still alleged screenshots. Well, they are screenshots, but they're screenshots of alleged text message conversations between the two of them. She has called him a narcissistic misogynist. She has said that he was emotionally abusive to her, that he used the term boundaries to excuse controlling behavior. And I was very intrigued when I kind of saw this pop up. I don't see a ton of that type of actor pop culture stuff come through on my feed. And I was like, I wonder what this could possibly be. Because I always go into it with an open mind. I don't care either way about Jonah Hill. So I didn't have any preconceived notions or I'm on his side already type of thing. I genuinely wanted to know, what could she be talking about? So I'm going to read a couple of them. And again, I'm not going to make any judgments on how the ex feels. She's entitled to feel however she wants to feel. If she felt like this was a bad relationship, that's completely up to her to make that decision. And she is entitled to have whatever feelings she has about it. But I think, and this is what I want to talk about, getting into the weeds on labeling people a narcissist or a misogynist or saying that their boundaries are controlling in a relationship, a non-married non-power dynamic relationship, is kind of tricky. And I think that it can be unhealthy and misleading. And especially in this scenario where it looks like she's really trying to cancel him for whatever reason, because maybe he wasn't the best partner to her in her eyes, which is valid. That might be how she feels, but this was a past relationship. First off, for me, that's a little weird. Leaking your text messages between you and your ex is also very weird to me. But again, it's not my relationship and I've not done that. So I guess I don't really have a place to have an opinion on it, other than I think that it's kind of weird. So if she doesn't think this was a great relationship, she's completely entitled to feel that way. And I don't want to take that away from her in this conversation. I just want to touch on what my viewpoint is on it and the greater issues that I see where this plays into what's in the general social narrative and in society right now. So one of his text message threads is, nor may I ever want that from my partner, and I reserve that right and I'm open about it. And what he was talking about is bathing suit pictures that she's posting on social media. And again, this is within a relationship. He is not saying that no women should be posting bathing suit pictures. He is not saying that women need to cover up. That's not the context of this interaction as far as the screenshot goes. He's talking specifically to her. She is a surfer, and he is talking about him being uncomfortable with her continuing to post pictures in which she's wearing a bikini, aka not having many clothes on. He said, basically, he reserves the right to have feelings about that. And I don't think that he's wrong, especially with a partner. If I saw that Luke started posting thirst traps on Instagram, I would probably have something to say to him about it. I would assume that we would have had that conversation before he did that. But if I've already mentioned before that out of respect for me, I would prefer that he didn't do that and he continues to do it anyway, which is kind of the narrative of these screenshots and the text messages, I would be trying to have a conversation about, hey, I don't know if this relationship is going to work because I've told you my boundaries and what I feel that I want in a relationship, which is his right to choose what he wants in a relationship, what he wants out of a romantic partner, what his levels for boundaries are within that relationship. It is his choice. And I think that I would hope anyone would feel empowered to say whether or not they felt comfortable with something in a relationship. So he said he'll respect her either way, but those are some of his boundaries of this romantic relationship. Again, I struggle to see anything wrong with that. Again, he's not saying that all women should cover up. He's not saying that immodest dressing is evil or, he's not going off on a rant. He's talking about specific boundaries within his romantic relationship with someone who he is not married to. This is just still a semi-casual relationship. And again, she has the right to feel however she wants to about this relationship. If she did not feel that this was for her, I think that he is trying to have that conversation saying, hey, if you do want to still post those bikini photos, that's fine. I just don't think that's going to work for us in a relationship because that's not what I want out of a relationship. And I don't think that that's a bad thing for him to say. I think that's so honest and vulnerable, especially nowadays, and especially dating someone who is a surfer, who does make their money while they are wearing a bikini most of the time. So I think that that's a really important conversation to have, especially if those are part of your boundaries. He said, I'd love to know more before the premiere, which they attended together, so I'm not put in the position of publicly flaunting our love if my boundaries are going to continue to be disrespected. That would be hurtful and triggering for me. And she responded with understood. Again, I hate that we only have screenshots of this conversation instead of the entire thread, because who knows what was said prior to this. From what he's saying, all that I can assume, because I cannot see the rest of the conversation, is he has had this conversation with her quite a few times. I don't know what her side of that conversation was, but it seems like this is not something new. This is something that's continually brought up in their relationship, and the rest of the screenshots kind of support that. And he feels like she's continuing to do these things that are crossing boundaries for him in a romantic relationship, which seem to be posting scantily clad photos, hanging out with men alone, which again, I don't think is a terrible boundary for someone in a relationship. If you don't like that boundary that person set with you, you probably shouldn't be in a relationship with them. I think that that is kind of the larger point that I was thinking about when reading this is, if she really didn't agree with this, they're not married, they don't have children together. If she really was like, no, I feel like that's misogynistic. I didn't see her ever push back on that in these screenshots either, really, which kind of says to me that she somewhat agreed with or was into having that conversation to try to work on that relationship while it was happening. And maybe now looking back, she's thinking, oh man, I really felt a certain way about it. It's okay for you to feel that way about it. If you think he's being misogynistic or narcissistic, you should leave that relationship. If his boundaries don't match up with yours, either talk about it and figure out a compromise, or don't be in that relationship with someone. But you telling that other person, hey, your boundaries are bullshit and I'm going to do whatever I want to do, is not a healthy relationship, first off. And secondly, I wouldn't want them to do that to me. I wouldn't want a romantic partner to look at my boundaries and be like, oh, well, I don't agree with those, so I'm not going to abide by them and I'm going to cross those boundaries. I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with that type of person. Again, I don't have to agree with the other person's boundaries, but I should respect them enough to say, okay, that's what you want out of a relationship, but that's not what I want or how I live my life. Therefore, I think we shouldn't be together anymore. And I wonder why she felt beholden to stay in that relationship. And again, I cannot tell without like more of this story. So he kind of continues on to say, and again, This is a relationship. It's the heat of the moment. He does say things very aggressively, and I don't doubt that that was reciprocated on the other side. I think we've all been there. He says, take some accountability and operate with respect. It's that simple, because I'm tired of your attitude towards surf culture and that contest. I think he's talking about her competing and hanging out with other single men outside of before or after a work event. It's what it sounds like. Again, I really cannot tell that much because they're very short screenshots. And he talks about that it's very hurtful and unacceptable to him, which is so vulnerable. I mean, again, she doesn't have to agree with that. She can think, oh, this is bullshit. This is misogynistic. This is whatever. However, he is saying how he feels, and she doesn't have to agree with that, but she does have to acknowledge that that is how it's making him feel. And so this scenario was just kind of a jumping off point for me with kind of what I'm seeing and hearing from some other people or seeing on social media. Men setting boundaries with the person that they're in a romantic relationship with, I think should be normal. And if we continue to brand it as misogynistic, controlling, or narcissistic when it really isn't, and it's a man saying, hey, this is what I am looking for in a partner for the rest of my life, and if you don't have respect for that, we probably shouldn't be together. Again, that's not them telling you that you have to change. That's saying, if you want to be in a relationship with me, these are my boundaries. This is the respect level that I'm looking for, and this is what I'm expecting out of it. Why is that like not normal now? I think that if it was flipped around and, maybe a woman said, I don't want you hanging out with other single women alone. I think a lot of women have that boundary. I think they would be livid. Or if it's nighttime and you don't come home when you say you're going to come home, I expect you to reach out and let me know where you're at. These are all like normal human boundaries that help to protect the sanctity of your relationship and the trust and respect within it for any healthy partnership. I think whether you're a man and a woman or the same sex, it doesn't matter. Those relationships, I think, are built on a level of respecting each other's boundaries, a level of trust, and like was shown in those screenshots, a really honest level of communication about it. I think you have to be able to really put it in a way to where the other person's going to understand it, which can be difficult, especially in the heat of the moment. But you have to know yourself enough to be able to make those boundaries. And making boundaries is tough because, like is said he's saying, this matters enough to me that I care about you, but if you continue to cross those boundaries, we shouldn't be together. That's a huge deal. I mean, that's an enormous deal. That's why boundaries are so hard, especially with people you really care about, partners, family, etc. You're saying, I care about you. Here's the line that I don't want you to cross. And if you do, I don't really want you in my life anymore. And that it's so difficult to like hold up your end of the bargain on that as the one putting those boundaries in place, because you're basically telling that person, here's what I expect out of you. And if that's not what you're willing to give or you expect out of this situation, we should be done. I think that that's a really rational conclusion. It's very hard for me to try to understand how that could be misogynistic. Again, don't have the whole view of the relationship, but saying that this person was emotionally abusive to you or that they were a narcissist in this scenario, you're entitled to feel however you want to feel about it as that partner. But that doesn't mean that that's reality. That could be how it made you feel. And if you continue to cross those boundaries with someone and they continue to give you pushback and start to get angry with you because you're disrespecting them by crossing their boundaries, I could see how that would make you very defensive. I could see how if you want to do what you want to do, which technically means you don't really want to be in a partnership with somebody, you don't want to compromise, it could feel very controlling. It could feel very manipulative and misogynistic and sexist. It definitely could. But from an outside perspective, as someone who's trying to look at it the other way, and if, if Luke decided that he wanted to do all of these things that Jonah Hill was giving pushback to her for, I would feel the same way as he did. I would try to the best of my ability to articulate my point and say, this makes me uncomfortable, or, we've talked about this lots of times and you're continuing to do the same thing that I told you I'm uncomfortable with. I don't think that's okay. And I think that we shouldn't be in a relationship, I think that that's really healthy. I think that that is how you should deal with problems in a relationship. And I don't see it as being controlling. I see it as maybe that's not the person for you to be in a relationship with. If you want to continue to post those photos like she did, if you want to continue to hang out with men outside of your relationship who are also single, that's okay. That's your choice to make. But this person's saying, I don't have to agree with that, which is completely correct. They don't. They don't have to agree with it at all. And they don't have to be in a relationship with you. You're making that choice. Either you are willing to say, hey, okay, I understand where you're coming from. I'm willing to make that compromise. Or you're saying, no, this is how I want to live my life. And they're going to say goodbye. And that's how boundaries work. I think that's the correct use of the term. And I know that she kind of gave pushback on that he didn't understand the word boundaries, or he used that as a control mechanism. It seems very clear that those are boundaries that a lot of men feel. And they feel very scared to voice them because of this kind of normalcy. Like the OnlyFans is so normal now for like younger men getting into relationships with women. And it can go both ways. There can be men on OnlyFans. I've never experienced that with my friends or anything, having that situation happen, but I'm sure it does. And you can want to continue to do that. You can want to continue to post those kind of photos or hang out with those type of people. But your partner, if you are in a romantic relationship with them, is entitled to say, you can keep doing that if you want, but I'm not going to be here if you do. I don't feel like that's controlling. It'd be very different if the partner in that situation was saying, if you don't stop doing that, I'm going to make you. That would be edging very, very, very much down the road of like controlling narcissistic behavior or threatening her in any way physically because of it. 100% I can see where control and narcissism and abuse comes into play in that situation. But telling someone, hey, we've talked about this before, if you keep doing this, I'm going to be out, I think is really healthy. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I would love to know your thoughts. I know this is it might be old news by the time I'm recording this, but I kind of wanted to open that conversation up. Have you ever experienced this in a relationship, past or present? Did you feel a certain way then? Looking back on it now, do you feel differently? Or maybe you have a different viewpoint and you do see this as abusive. I would love to hear your side of it because I can't see it and I need someone else to tell me their viewpoint for me to be able to look at it that way. So thank you so much for watching, coming along, listening to me ramble, and I hope that we can continue this down in the comments below. So I'll see you next time.